Mr. Brent Hull, Mike Barrett, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about windows. We're going to be talking about product innovation, and I'm excited for you guys to make time here. Mike Barrett, I'm going to start with you. The pandemic, among other things, I know has really created some long lead times about windows. Let's think about that as well as high performance windows. We're going to put those in air quotes here for the moment. Can you give us a little context from your perspective in Chicago, building high-end homes and apartments? Kind of what's the state of the union? What's the status quo from your perspective as we think about high-performance windows?
Sure. So I think the market here is driven primarily by just a couple of brands, and people want to see those signs on the windows as we're building the home. But frankly, our clients don't seem to be super concerned with the window as long as it meets, I guess, some basic requirements that, they've seen in other homes. Most of the windows here are aluminum clad on the outside, double pane glass, may or may not be primed on the inside. And honestly, my clients, I've never had a question as to what type of wood goes into the window or really anything to do with the technical details of the windows that we put in. And I think that is probably pretty common around Chicago.
How different is that from the homeowner you're serving? Now, also to be said here is you're a builder, you're a preservationist, you're a window manufacturer, and you're an architectural millwork creator, right? So you're covering some different aspects. So there's probably some selection bias in the people that are coming to you, but maybe give a little context and maybe tie that into some of maybe some of the homeowner feedback that Mike's getting and how that either differs or is consistent with what you hear.
I think that's true for a lot of products in our houses. If there's a designer or if there's an architect, there's an aesthetic piece there. I think they look to us for, the nuts and bolts and to make sure it's not going to fall apart. But there is not a client who's ever come in and said, I need, X kind of window in my house. As a, starting point. Okay. We have had clients that said, hey, we're interested in your window, but we haven't had, clients aren't leading with that. Okay. But I don't think in home building today, even high-end home building, there is a name brand thing that says, except maybe Sub-Zero Wolf, that I have to have in my house, that at a cocktail party, a homeowner would say, well, we did the kitchen, but we got a Sub-Zero Wolf package, maybe, right? There's a Lee Corneau or there's a couple French brands that are very expensive these days. But, if you think about, a car, or you think about I drive a Mercedes or a Jaguar or whatever, or Tesla, there is a name brand appeal that goes along with that. I don't think that's the case with a lot of high-end building today. And so windows are just another commodity that are going into houses.
Mike, in terms of the windows you install, what is your expectation in terms of kind of your warranty, and how do you explain to homeowners why you choose the windows you do? Because I know you are not buying solely on price, right? And it sounds like there's maybe some name brand recognition there, but in terms of your warranty and someone saying, yeah, I guess there's the expectation if I get a home built by Barrett Homes, well, probably in 12 or maybe 15 years, I'm going to have to spend another $20,000 or $30,000 to get these all replaced. How does that factor in the calculus of the windows that you choose? And again, you can name whatever you want to name. It's totally up to you.
I think the way we go about it is just market research and comparing. We'll literally have reps bring the cross section of their windows to us to compare versus the ones that we previously used. As far as warranting the windows, we kind of lean on the manufacturer for that. I mean, we have a 1-year warranty that kind of covers the entire home, but after that, the warranty does get serviced through the company where we bought them. And so, that's, I don't think there's an expectation from a client's point of view that they would ever have to swap out a window, but also our clients, I don't think they have the expectation necessarily that they're going to own the home forever either. We have a lot of people that, might only stay in the house for 5 or 10 years and then they move along. So it's not something that crosses their mind.
So Brent, I think that's a good transition here. Reading your book, I'm just this, I don't know to what degree this is an American mindset, but it's that, yeah, these, they're fungible. Why should I expect a home to last? I hope it lasts 30 years. My mortgage is 30 years. And then you kind of give the context of when homes are built right, they can last for hundreds of years. So maybe tie that into a little bit to maybe the earned insight you had to develop the 100-year window. In the video you kind of say, hey, this was 30 years in the making. Go into that. What does that mean?
The story I tell is that we have been doing in the market for a long time, and we did a very high-end remodel for a house, put in a major brand manufacturer windows that, I think 15 or 16 years later were literally rotting out, falling out. We're working on a house right now. We just finished working on it. They had taken all the steel windows out and put a clad window in, and those windows were failing as well. And so, we're thinking that we're putting in the best in the market, right? That's not custom made, and finding that it just isn't lasting very long. And if you dial into the window world right now, and you see the flyers that probably come through your mailbox all the time to replace and renew your windows, one of the reasons they're saying to replace windows is because of glass failure. And so the major manufacturers, the Pellos, Marvins, and Andersons of those worlds, if you go onto their websites and dig down, they have a 5 to 10 year warranty. Okay. That isn't very long. And so, and our experience in our market is that those windows are rotting out, and then the glass is failing. And then when you ask them to replace that window, say a sash is the sash has gone bad, they go, well, we don't make that style anymore. We're going to have to give you a whole new deal. And so I'm not saying it happens every day, but it happens enough that we, at the same time, on our millwork division, on our millwork side, we're restoring historic buildings that are 100, 150 years old, and taking the windows out that are original windows, restoring them, putting them back in, and going, why aren't we building windows like this anymore? And so that's what started it on our end, is just, this is crazy that the windows are so cheap, they're disposable. And so it was a little bit of a disgust in, what you were paying for and everything else too.
Mike, take me back to the first time. Maybe you heard it from me, maybe you didn't. There's a thing, there's a guy. It probably fits with your clientele. It's called a 100-year window. It's a window. It's supposed to last 100 years. What is your response to that?
Sounds fantastic. I mean, I would like for my homes to last that long. So sure, that's something I'd be interested in. I think my initial question was like, does it perform in this climate that we're in up here in Chicago?
Is that to me?
That's it. I didn't. I'm assuming. Hope so. He's like, no. It's Texas and below. It's really good. Above the Mason-Dixon, you're screwed. No. What is the answer? I think that's a legit. And this is where, from a sales mindset and from a broader perspective, you hear that. And I'm like, and again, having read your book or your books and thinking, I know your perspective is, there's a way that's done this with craftsmanship that, right, in Europe, these last hundreds of years. Or there's windows that have been on the East Coast that have lasted much longer. So anyway, I don't want to ramble.
Well,
What's the answer to that?
I think that there's nothing as confusing, okay, for me to try to explain to clients as the window conundrum, okay? Because to Mike's point, great, but does it work in our climate? The quick answer is it can, but just stick it in your hole without doing other things. No, it will not have the same U value as a double pane window. That's one piece of it, right? That's just that's answering his question, but it's not really solving anything for anybody. Because the energy codes that we're dealing with, okay, that are asking to hit a certain number. You can either hit that number by having your window tested and it gets a U value of whatever, 0.5 or whatever it is. It checks off a box for that person doing the energy code, and they say, yep, that checks. The other way to do it is to change the other parts of the envelope of your house, okay, the insulation, the amount of insulation, the air conditioning units, the efficiency of different things, so that you've now gone prescriptive, and so that you can put in a longer lasting window that doesn't have to hit this U number and that, still performs. We could spend 2 hours and I could take you through PowerPoints and explaining what's going on with windows and everything else. A double pane window from Marvin Pell or whoever else has an R value of 2. Okay. My window has an R value of 1. Okay. And really just talking about the glass in the windows. Okay. Well, you've doubled your insulation. Yeah, but your wall's 14, 16, 18, whatever it is, it's still the weak point. Okay. Now, how many windows do you put in your house? How many holes are there in the envelope of your house where you can actually calculate the energy loss from that small percentage? It ends up being, the surface area ends up being like, 10 or 15%. And so to expect to see an energy savings, okay, by replacing the windows, or, if you did replace them with single pane, if you had single pane, replace them with double pane, the studies are showing it's 40 to 120 years. I've now backed up and we're looking at the house and the envelope as a whole and going, well, actually, the percentage of actually windows is only 10%. Am I really going to save that much by doing this? And is it important that I get a window that I can get, thicker mutton bars, and I can get, nicer hardware, and I can get these other things, and wood that's not going to rot, and there's no finger jointed wood. And so, are those things worth it? And so the problem is there's so many decisions you have to make as a builder that this is just more noise. It's just more crap you got to go through. And so it's hard. It's, I've now been blabbering for 5 minutes and I've only, scratched the surface. And so it's a complicated piece that, we talked earlier about, what is the sales pitch? What is the education that's required? It's immense. And so, we are not going out there saying we're the solution for everybody, but for, the people that care.
Yeah. Mike, maybe you can kind of add some color to that, or any kind of thoughts to what Brent shared. The other question I have is, when I hear you say that homeowners, sometimes they don't really care. They might know, or a friend recommended from a friend, I'm looking for these colors and this name. And after that, they don't really care. The other thing is, use the word holes. We have a building envelope. What you don't want to do is have it be drafty or leaky, and you want it to last a long time. We are deliberately going to put many, many holes in around, and we're going to put in windows. It is crazy to some degree that very discerning, I know some of your homeowners, they're intelligent people. Why wouldn't this be at the top of their list of things that they probably should care about? Yeah,
that's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I think they in our market, they will drive around, and if they have, seen a Marvin sticker, a Pella sticker on a different house, and then they see it on your home or your product, they feel like it's okay. That must be good enough because they've seen it before. It's odd to me. I mean, it seems like it should be a more important aspect of the home, yet we just don't really get a lot of pushback on it. Brent, I want to know kind of who is your target customer for your 100-year window, would you say?
So, I think there's three pieces of there's three sections, okay, that are interested and are calling and are responding to us. We've got old homeowners, okay, because 50% of the replacement windows put out by the Marvin Pella Andersons of the world, 50% of the windows they make are replacement for their replacement windows, okay? So they are basically 10, 15 years later, they're switching their windows out with these customers, and because their windows don't last very long. So those old homeowners that are responding to us going, they got screwed up. They put in these windows. They're rotting out. They want our windows in there. So old homeowners is one pie. There is a big market that is the commercial side, which is commercial historic buildings that, because of landmarks commissions or because of registered properties and things like that, they have to meet a certain standard. And windows, being the most important thing architecturally on these old buildings, are requiring our type of window. So a big part of our pie is commercial, historical, restoration and replication. And then the third piece is high-end residential. And high-end residential, are the new houses for clients like ours. I suspect clients like yours. And we are, like I said at the beginning, my clients don't necessarily come in asking for windows either. But when we bring to them and say, look, we're gonna bring this to you, and we really would encourage this, and that's the way we handle it with our clients, is like, look, you've hired me to come in here. We don't want to put in this kind of window. We want to put in this kind of window. And they'll typically go, okay, well, what's the cost difference? I say it's about twice. And they go, okay, well, let's look at it and we'll go from there. Okay. Then when I show the architect the deep profile lines, and I show them kind of, the depth and the shadows and the things that we're doing that are different, that have been changed over years, they kind of like that opportunity. So that's the three markets. That's where we're living. Majority, probably, if we did over $1 million, 60% of it was commercial. 40%, 30% was this high-end residential, and 10% was replacement on historic houses.
How do you know, this is kind of, I'm sure you've been asked this, but you call it a 100-year window. Obviously, you're nowhere near that age. And so how do you know that window is going to last that long?
Mainly based on historic precedent, that we are, restoring windows that are over 100 years old. We understand the reason why they last that long is because of wood quality, number one, which is probably 80 or 90% of it. And then two, the putty glazing, which is a sacrificial product on those windows that fails so that the whole sash doesn't rot. And so when you have a window and the glazings come out, you were replacing that glazing versus a new window, which has a wood mutton both sides. And when it rots, the whole sash is gone. So there's a technique as far as how they built it that we are copying exactly. And then high wood quality, which is solving 80, 90% of the problem, and then the putty glazing, which is the other piece. When we say it's going to last 100 years, if you don't paint it and stick it in the field, probably won't last 100 years. But if you put it in a house and it's painted and protected, even if it's exposed to the weather, we understand from historic precedent, it's going to last 100 years.
So walk me through. I saw Austin, our esteemed videographer, had to explain to me how to pronounce one of the woods. You have tropical hardwood sapele?
Sapele, yeah.
Should I know what that is? Where the hell's that grown? Does that come from here?
What'd you call me? It is a African hardwood. Okay,
it's an African hardwood.
It's like African mahogany. It's a deep, rich, thick product. We used to use Spanish cedar, okay, which is another tropical hardwood. Spanish cedar ends up being too oily, and the paint doesn't stick to it very well. We moved to sapele as a very sustainable hardwood that lasts a very long time. Now, we are also, considering going to Akoya and Caboni, okay, which are European treated radiata pine that, Akoya stands behind their wood for 50 years. And so, now you've all of a sudden got a warranty on your wood that's attractive. The problem is it's, 4 times the cost of sapele. So, and just to put it in perspective, most of the large manufacturers make their windows out of radiata pine, okay, which is a Western pine that's been finger jointed and treated a little bit. Akoya is also radiata pine, but it has been treated, heated, pickled so that it lasts a very long. They're actually changing the molecular structure of the wood so that it doesn't warp, it doesn't twist, and it lasts a very long time. So there's some technology coming that in 15, 20 years could mean that having sapele isn't as important. But for right now, we think that's the best wood available.
All right, pop quiz, Mike. Tropical hardwood sapele. Am I just a jackass? I don't know what this is. Do you know what this is? Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard of that before. Yeah.
Just you, Bradley.
A lot of those different exotic woods.
All right. Well, we'll find that.
Brent, can I ask you another question about the windows?
Of course.
So what's to stop someone I'm wondering why, so all of your windows are wood clad on the outside as well, correct?
Yes.
So what's to stop someone from cladding it with aluminum, but then using the sacrificial puttying detail that you use in order to take advantage of it being an aluminum, for weathering and whatnot versus the wood? Would that work?
I don't think so. If you look at the outside, the putty glazing is on the outside of the sash. So if you are cladding the outside, you'd either have to cover that putty glazing, or you're not putting in a sacrificial deal. The problem with the cladding is that if water does get back in there behind it, it just rots the wood out. Now it's the problem on that other job that we're having right now, where we're ultimately going to be replacing all those windows in that house, is that the cladding failed.
So Mike, I'm curious, as I was thinking about, I was probably dating both of us. Several years ago, we met in one of your homes, and you had made I think at the time, some decisions to really differentiate your product with some of the insulation and some of the extra investment you were putting in behind the walls for the insulation. And I remember us having the conversation about how do you educate the homeowner on the value of something that they will pay more for, but it has a higher value to them. But the minute that drywall goes up, it's out of sight, out of mind, because that seems to me like a tough educational process as well. How did you overcome that? And as I'm thinking about that with the window discussion that we just had.
So you're talking about when we started using, foam insulation everywhere, when people were just using fiberglass still?
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not sure I was getting a premium on my homes because of that. That's just something that we wanted to implement for energy efficiency. And then, the market caught up to that, obviously, and now it's kind of the standard. But I think that one specifically, though, people could understand pretty easily how that was going to benefit them in terms of utility bills and savings that way.
Okay. No, that's fair. Brent, let me ask you, so in terms of bringing this to market, how did you begin thinking about it? So it's 30 years in the making. You guys are doing this on the preservationist side. So hell, why aren't we doing this? And then kind of bringing something that you're already an expert at and becoming a window manufacturer. What were the steps internally? Because I think all of us, when we have an innovation, there's something new, there's something different. It's one thing to make the thing. The other thing is to market, to communicate it, and to really bring it to. And here we are a year later, more than $1 million in sales. You guys exceeded your first year goals. What were some of those processes that helped you really thinking through? Because I think a lot of our listeners, maybe they're not manufacturing their own 100-year window, but surely they're thinking about their processes and maybe some products that they're doing differently. Any sort of general insights that you said, hey, we were methodical about this, and this led to our success?
Well, you made it sound a lot more romantic and well thought out than it was. I think where we are is there was a number of steps and things that took place that we had to consider. One, when it was actually Matt Reisinger who said, "Why aren't you making this for everybody?" And it was just like, I don't know. I'm not sure why we're not. And so he actually was the first one that brought it up, that kind of said, hey, this might be something that might go in the general market. Two, we've got a 25,000 square foot shop, got 25 guys down there. We have our challenge is not sales, it's production. And so actually, the thing that scares me is if we, all of a sudden next year did 3 million, we start hitting, some production things that we might have to go make a decision about doing another factory or something else. It was nice because we were able to kind of crawl, walk, run into this thing where we were able to test the market. We got a really good response. And as we began to tell the story, we were getting these things like, well, yeah, why wouldn't everybody do this? And so where we're hitting a wall is, and we've talked to people in Boston, we've talked to people in Ohio, and we've talked to people in Wisconsin. We can still provide our window. There's a historic storm sash that was provided in the 1900s. That is an historic solution that when you have that on, it equals the energy efficiency of a double pane window. And so there are some things that are ways around that to go into other markets, but really our biggest challenge is production. And then we run into things like Mike's bringing up, like, well, how would I sell this in my market? Would people pay for this? I think another challenge we have is that how do we service it if there is service things? We sending guys up there. I think ultimately we want to have people in each market who are able to, show up, service it. Because when we put our window in, because it's a double hung window with sash weights and pulleys and everything else, there are a lot of moving parts that require finesse. And when we put in the weather stripping and how we do that. And so it's a higher end product that requires a little bit more service and care, which means that we're probably in the Southwest, for a while before we start growing and moving, or we're going to be very strategic about, okay, we're going into Chicago, but we're going into Chicago this way, and this person's going to be able to service us or whatever else we do.
Got it. Mike, as you think of your contractor base, the subs you're working with, installing a higher end product that requires a little bit of finesse. Is that what your subs do well?
We usually have our rough framers install windows here. So no, I would be a little bit nervous about installing a product like that with that crew. I feel like I'd want there to be someone local with knowledge of it. And in this scenario, I probably would end up having my trim carpenters come in and do that installation versus the rough carpenter.
Yeah, maybe go into that just a little bit more, because I think this is a specific instance of a general problem. Name a manufacturer and get them in the room of something that's a building material product and tell them, like, we can do all the testing we want. We have all this incredible care. We make videos. We have information. We got 20,000 words in size 2 font explaining how to do it. And then these chuckleheads get out there and just drive a couple finish nails through it and leave. This is an issue that we have. You are inside and outside the home, Mike. You are putting in high quality building products. How do you go about, from a leadership standpoint and management, of just making sure any product, they do it right?
In education, which we try to provide to our trades as much as possible. But anytime, something is new, introduced that's new, there's always going to be a learning curve for it. So unfortunately, the first time that we were to put in these windows, I'm sure they wouldn't be put in perfectly. There's a lot of different ways to install windows, and so unless you have completely educated your crew for that specific window, I think there's going to be some mistakes made.
Yeah, maybe Brent, kind of tail into that. Are there specific things? What have you guys learned about installing your own product in this window so far?
Yeah, it's not hard to install. It's built like a tank, and so it's not fragile. As long as it's level and plumb, you shouldn't have a problem with it. And so it's usually trimming that we get questions about how it gets trimmed out. Getting it set, put in the frame, and secured isn't really the problem. It's then, well, this isn't like, these other windows I've been dealing. Where's my trim go? How do I put on there? So we're dealing with things like that. And then, because we have higher grade hardware, we're oftentimes letting the window get painted, trimmed, and then going back and installing hardware to finish it out. Think about a casement window with the casement stay. We don't have cranks that break. We're trying to use, again, products that are 100-year products.
How much of a concern is it that someone will come to the market with a 101-year window and you'll be screwed? Have you guys discussed this internally?
No, thanks for throwing that idea out there to the market. I appreciate that.
8-minute abs. Yeah. Just wait for 7-minute abs. You guys are out of business. All right, Mike, let me ask you this. As you think about coming from the builder perspective, where a manufacturer out there, they're creating something new, something different. You're saying, I like that. Is there anything you've seen or any examples you've got where a manufacturer has made it easy for you to not only understand the value they provide, but also make it easy for you to tell their story? Because you have to go and then kind of sell that, at least to some degree, on, hey, it's new and different. And I know you're always looking for ways, similar to the foam insulation, to differentiate your stuff and get ahead of what other people are doing. So there is something different. There's something tangible about that. Any story come to mind or experience recently where you said, hey, this company made it really easy for me to tell their story to then provide something new and unique to a homeowner that you're serving?
Yeah, interestingly, I would say it's a window company nearby here. Like I said, most people are using the big brands. There is a company locally here that makes windows in-house. They have, in my opinion, a far superior window than the other big shops do. And they will, the customer service is far better. And frankly, I think the product is just far better. So I put them into a home recently, and I think the people, despite not knowing anything about the brand, after having seen, the cuts of the windows and comparing them to the other brands, it was just kind of a no-brainer for them to go with this company.
What about you, Brent? Anything come to mind, and just some other product that you're using from a manufacturer that made it easy to kind of tell the story for them, for your customer?
I think when tankless water heaters came out, that was a pretty easy one. It was kind of, hot water on demand. It was more efficient. That was a pretty quick one that comes to mind. Yeah. I mean, I think that most manufacturers are trying to solve the install problem. I find that a lot of the benefits that they, we'll talk about are how much easier it is to install, which, if you've read my book, that's not always the best thing for craftsmanship and for the longevity of our homes. And so,
and that's another 12-hour podcast for sure on that. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys making time to talk about this. Mike, anything on this topic or anything, understanding that Brent, like you, is a builder, also a preservationist, deals with architectural millwork, as you can kind of see behind us here, window manufacturer, anything else before we go that you have a question just in general, what we've talked about that you didn't mention, or any question for Brent before we go?
Sure, Brent. I'm actually restoring a Victorian landmark home right now for myself. The powers that be kind of told me that the windows had to stay and be restored. And so I guess my question for you would be, and they are being restored currently, if a window can be restored, would you say to leave it? Or would you say that your 100-year window is that much superior to that old window that you might want to consider swapping them?
That's a good question. My answer would be, it depends. There are some windows in old houses that are only 1 3/8 thick, as opposed to 1 3/4, which is what ours are. And so if your windows are 1 3/8 thick and they're 100 plus years old, they're probably pretty worn out. The weather stripping, the glazing isn't as thick, the wood isn't as thick. And, I would say that the 100-year window would be better. But I mean, remember, I came from a background in historic preservation. And, one of the whole deals with historic preservation is, keep the original fabric as much as possible, which is where those, your people are coming from. Our product is an in-kind product. And so you could go back to their landmarks and basically say, look, this is in-kind, meaning we're replacing it exactly the way it was. And, we can match profiles, we can match mutton bars, any of those different things, and get you a almost an exact replica. If your windows are in decent shape and can be restored, I'd restore them. You're going to save money that way. If they're starting to get tired, the frames are wonky, they're just not going to last very much longer, then you might consider ours.
I saw on your website that you have a couple different options for glass, and there's one that I can't remember the name of it, but it's essentially an insulated, and it looks like it's almost a double pane. Is that the standard, or do you have different types of glass that you do?
Standard is single pane, but that is called a Pilkington Spacia glass, okay? And Pilkington is a Japanese company that has vacuum sealed the glass, okay? And so, most glass just has an airspace. These are actually vacuum sealed. And because there's a vacuum seal, because that the transfer of heat and cold doesn't happen the same way, it's much more insulatory. And so it has an R value of 4 to 7, depending on which one you get. The negative, the downside of them, there's a little black dot where on your pane of glass down here in the corner where they suck the air out, there's a steel nipple right there that they cover with a black neoprene little dot. And a lot of architects can't get over that. It is, easily the most efficient type glass on the market. And one of the solutions we have is doing the Pilkington Spacia glass in the storm on the outside. So in the winter, you're not opening the windows, you have the storm on, and you've got that Pilkington Spacia, and our window is like a European triple glaze. It's so efficient. So again, the mountain of information that's there. But yes, to answer your question, that's what you're looking at.
All right, wise guy, you knew what Sapele is, so one up there. Pilkington Spacia glass. Do you know what that is? You heard of that?
No.
All right then. Well, learned all sorts of new things here today. Gentlemen, I know you guys are both very busy. I appreciate making time. Always love talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.